and welcome back. Today we have a very different video prepared for you. We invited a special guest to answer some questions around interpretation.
Yes, her name is Elisabeth Veit. She is a singer and actress, and since she's doing both things professionally, we thought that it would be interesting to have an interview with her and ask her some questions. So we hope you enjoy it.
So, Elisabeth, when did you start singing and acting, and what was first?
So I don't know to honestly answer. I was just a kid that liked to act things out, stories, sing, and stuff like that. Just like I think most kids just like to do that. But I remember being on stage for the first time in a real theater. I was about 8, and that just really got to me. I was in a choir and we were doing a musical. So that was just my first time that I knew that this is where I wanted to spend my professional life.
So, why did you then start singing or acting? Because you kind of changed the profession, right? A little bit.
Well, I think they both went along for me anyways. But I graduated from school, and then I went and had my 3-year acting education here in Vienna. And singing always was included in that education anyways. But I still kept going to see my singing teacher outside of that education. And yeah, then I did musical theater plays that were only spoken. So I kind of did both all the time.
Cool.
And how do both disciplines complement each other, and what is it that makes things easier in the other discipline?
So I think they complement each other quite well. And then there is places where they don't complement each other, like where they are complementing each other, that it's the same instrument, of course, we're using for singing and for speaking. It's always our voice. So this would be one thing. And then, of course, interpretation, coming from an acting education, is quite a good tool to help with interpretation or creating a storyline, or maybe even getting into a certain character if you sing a certain song. Or so that is also complementing, I find. And of course, in spoken plays, there is musicality too, even if there is no singing included. A scene needs to have a certain rhythm. A monologue needs to have a certain rhythm. So there is always a metronome. Comedy only lives off rhythm. So there always is musicality in a spoken play.
Yeah,
even.
I've seen that.
And where they don't complement each other, I find is, but that's maybe just an example, in music theater. Let's say it's an operetta, and maybe you sing a part, you have an aria where you have coloratura. So let's say the line is, give me your hand, and this would be a written play, just speaking, give me your hand. But what if the coloratura is on hand? Like, what do you do? So music theater especially follows another syntax and another metrum. So we always have to keep that in mind when we sing, that it's not the same syntax, I would say. So that is where they don't actually complement each other.
Were there also things that were harder for you?
In general, you mean while going this way in my life and being an artist, you mean?
Yeah, like on that journey.
On my journey as an artist? Yes, of course. And there still are, and there will always be, because I believe this is what is very important in order to grow as an artist. I mean, we all know that we need to grow as human beings, and parents, friends, daughters. It's very important to grow, right? But for artists, I think it's essential to overcome certain maybe burdens or harder times Like, and they can be very crucial and existential, actually. I remember in my second year of my acting education, when I was on stage, I didn't know what to do with my hands. Every look that everything just felt off and weird, and my intuition didn't work anymore. And then I figured in third year, the intuition became a craft. So in order to become a craft, my intuition somehow, because first year was all about intuition. Yeah, good. You go with the flow and it's right and it feels good. But then second year, terrible. But that's where the shift happens from being maybe like maybe a hobby actress to become a trained actress. So this was a very hard time for me, second year in my acting education. But I don't know, I remember not finding a character for a play. That can be very frustrating because maybe I just didn't do enough research, or maybe I didn't look into the right direction. So yeah, there are, like my life as an artist, there's constant hard times. But I think that is what is really important, because when you overcome that, you grow. So, and I would personally not want to see an artist who stands by their stuff for the last 30 years. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
very
true.
inspirational. Cool. So how do you actually deal with it? You said that you couldn't find a character sometimes, that you didn't even maybe make enough research. So is it like you are now, experienced enough that you, even though you have some troubles, you find your way in, or you improvise or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, there's many sources for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, if you're talking about the theater world, it very much depends on who's directing also. And well, there are so many sources for this. Well, there's methods for acting, of course, that we can more or less rely on if they speak to us. If they don't speak to us, you just skip it. I would recommend, because why making it even harder if it doesn't speak to you? I'm pretty sure there's an acting method for everyone out there. There's even, sometimes it's even, your way into a character can even be like an animal. Not to become an animal like 100%, but maybe take 50% of that animal, because something about this animal is right for this. So this could be a source. Or you just research on, if you're not into storylines, why is this person, who is this person, what is their favorite drink, what is their favorite dish, how do they sleep, how much do they sleep? These are all questions, they're constantly in my mind when I build a character. When is she lying, or when are they telling the truth? All of these little things that we can just wonderfully create when we are being creative. But yeah, many sources, I would say. So it's a mix. For me, it's always a mix. It's never been one method. I follow this and that. I always take whatever fits best for this one particular production.
I think that's also very useful advice that maybe people who watch this at some point can take, that it's not just one method, but there's maybe, even for a different play, different method anyway. And I have a question. In your opinion, I mean, you already gave us now some tools that people can use, but in your opinion, what are the ingredients of a good acting? What people would call a good, believable acting?
Yeah. I think that's very individual. I think it's very subjective, because what I like, maybe it's not what you like or what speaks to me because of my life and what I've experienced, blah, 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 all of that. It's very, very individual. But for me, good acting is always being in the moment, being spontaneous, or at least letting me as the audience see that it's spontaneous, even if it's planned. So a big amount of concentration, a big amount of imagination, fantasy, the craft, like the voice. Being a good actor means having a sustainable vocal technique, because usually you rehearse in the morning 4 to 5 hours, and then you maybe go home and eat a good lunch, sleep maybe, or rest, and then you go back to a show, and then you come home midnight. So it is really can be very demanding on your voice. So vocal technique is essential for me. Because in live theater, we hardly ever are amplified. So all we have to rely on, and I'm talking theater, I'm not talking film, I'm talking theater. Vocal technique, essential. Imagination, spontaneousness, being very, very connected to your senses in order to be concentrated and spontaneous. A certain musicality, just like I said before, for a scene, for a monologue, even in spoken theater, there always is a rhythm, there's always music in it. Being very open-minded, I would say, and not put the character first and not your personality. That's what I like in acting, but that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we were asking for your opinion.
So let's move on to another question. Is it possible to teach interpretation to young learners? Is there a simple interpretation for children?
I would go with the CVT approach. I would go with the imagination. Like I said before, animals, all that we do in CVT when we teach younger kids. So go with animals, characters that they know from TV series, that they know from books, maybe have them. I think it can be very fun for them to make up a character, right? So you as the teacher or as the mentor need to ask specific questions, like this could be, what kind of shoes is she wearing, or what kind of shoes are they wearing? What's their favorite meal? What kind of music do they listen to? Or, things that they can relate to, things that they have that are important in their stage of their life. I think so. Imagination, I would always go for that with younger people.
So we talked about earlier about the fact that what is it that makes a good acting, and that sometimes you found it hard to find yourself in the character back in the day. And you already gave us some tools on how to solve that problem. But what is actually the reason why? What is it that stops people to get into character?
That is a very good question. If you notice the answer to that, we will write a best-selling book on acting, I think. I think, again, this is very individual, because we all come from different experiences, and those experiences actually are that we craft in our artistry, right? So we take them and then we mold them into something else in order to feed our characters or the artistry. So if someone is to start creating a character and then they feel like they can't go any further, they're somehow stuck, I would suggest take a completely other way. So if you maybe come from, I don't know, if you're doing all this, the questions, where is she coming from, or where are they coming from, who are they, had they seen before this scene or whatever. If you have all these questions and you're stuck, you go somewhere completely else. Like you go to animals. And you're like, oh, maybe he's 15% of a flamingo or whatever. It could be anything, maybe to also loosen up yourself and to loosen up the pressure of God, I have to find this character. You just go really completely another way and maybe make it even fun for a day, and then you can go back to serious work. I'm always more for the fun parts, but yeah, lose it up, I guess. Google, I need another, is there the weirdest acting method in the world? And then you just try that out. And then something will be moving anyways. Or you just leave it for 1 or 2 days. Or maybe you're reading a book and you're like, oh, maybe this character does not seem anything like the character that I'm creating at the moment. But maybe that is why I exactly should take this character from that book and give it like 30% of this character, just to keep it, have some kind of movement.
Yeah.
So it's rather sometimes people being too tight about one method that actually stops them, maybe.
I guess so. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then you can always go back to your method.
Yeah.
Just make a little excursion to something else, a little vacation.
All right. So could you explain further what a psychological gesture is? How can a singer or actor learn and work on that?
Do you mean psychological gesture in the sense of Chekhov? Yes. Okay. So a psychological gesture as made or invented by Chekhov is basically the essence of a character in a gesture. And that is a little advanced, so I would never recommend this as a starting point for someone who has not experience in the Chekhov method. So yeah, this is not something I would recommend to a singer who is stuck in their character, because I don't know if are they trained in Chekhov method. I don't know. But if you're interested in Chekhov method, then you maybe Google and see in your area, is there a Chekhov course, and maybe it will go further down to that psychological gesture. But this is a bit advanced, I would say.
Okay, so does this method work for you as an artist?
No.
No.
Not for me. I think it's really, really good on so many people, and it is so helpful for so many people. I don't have a lot of experience in this method. I did not feel it spoke to me when I tried it out, but this has been years ago. I should probably go back and see if now it's a better fit, because you know how we change, and then maybe a few years later it's like awakening. But yeah. Not so much for me, but this is a long time ago. But I'm sure it's very helpful to many people.
Yeah, again, it depends on each person individually. And so one more question from my side. So what is the biggest issue, or what are the biggest issues, if there are many, that singers encounter when they have to work on interpretation? So especially singers, because also I struggle myself. I need like 10 times to actually get into character. But I know many singers do. And how did you solve that?
If a singer struggles with interpretation,
because often singers are just used to sing, but not so much. I mean, I know singers from the musical theater, they are way more into interpretation. Some opera singers, I'm sorry to say that not all of them. I'm sorry if I don't make friends here now, but I feel like many singers from the opera world and outside of the opera world, like in general, from other musical styles, they often struggle with getting into character. So how would you solve that, and what are the biggest issues actually?
Well, that would depend on how much time do we have. Not for this interview, but how much time would I have with that certain singer, right? So usually in theater, there is a 6 to 8 weeks rehearsal period. That that seems like a lot of time. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're still building your character when you're doing the shows, when you're doing the performances, which is fine, I think. If this was like a workshop situation where a singer comes with a song and she or they have already struggled with interpretation, if this has been a thing before, I would loose it up. I would go with shapes. I would go with, is there something, I have actually taught this on Zoom. I was not in the room with the person, and I said, do you have something that is more round shaped? Yeah, I have this cup, whatever. And I said, okay, now you just concentrate on the outer shapes of this cup and you sing the song. And then you need to have something that is the opposite of like this round shaped thing, maybe something that is very edgy. And she had like a cactus, I think. And I was like, okay, now you just do the outlines of this character with your eyes and sing the song. And then it was a completely different song. So I like to go with those kind of things that we don't necessarily have to relate to or dig into our souls. But I like it because everybody can maybe not relate, but everybody can do those exercises. And then they see, okay, so there is point A with the round shaped object, and there is point B with the more edgy object. And somewhere in between, maybe my interpretation will happen. And yeah, but that's just an example on how easy we can be with ourselves. And why not? Things can be easy sometimes. We don't always have to dig our souls.
Okay, so coming back to our last question to you, Elisabeth, what would you recommend singers that are new to acting? Any simple exercises or practice routines? Any books?
When I teach basic acting, and this is not necessarily singers, but beginners, I would always go for sense memory exercises. That would be Lee Strasberg. So really starting off with, how do I feel? What are my senses? What do I taste? What do I smell? What do I hear? What do I see? What do I feel? To sharpen those senses, because that is a very big part and very important part in acting or interpretation. And then I would just say, go find an acting class close by, maybe a workshop, maybe it's a few sessions. I would always go with a group thing rather than single sessions, because you learn so much from watching other people doing stuff. So I would always go for the group teaching. And then books, I find a little hard when you're a beginner. For me personally, it was hard when I was beginning. I had all these books, Keith Johnston, Peter Brook, Sanford Meisner, Lee Strasberg, Stanislavski, all these books, Stella Adler. So now I named a few authors that people can look into, but it really didn't do anything for me because it was so theoretical and I didn't have the practice of it. So now for the last 10 years, I have been reading those books again, and I find it very joyful. But because I've had I now have about 25 years of experience on stage. So I feel like I can understand and appreciate it more now than when I was a beginner. So I would always go for the practice. Go find yourself a course and just do. Maybe don't go for a method, maybe go for improvisation classes that can be very beneficial, or find yourself a good Meisner or Strasberg class. Yeah.
That was it for today. Thank you, Elisabeth, for joining us. We really hope you enjoyed the interview. For us, it was very, very nice and inspirational. So it was great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Yes. And we also hope that everyone who watched this video loved and enjoyed this interview as much as we did, and that you also got some inspiration from Elisabeth.
Exactly. So as always, we leave our contact details in the description below. We're gonna leave also the homepage of Elisabeth. So if you want to get in touch with her or have some session, you're very welcome. And also we leave some timestamps in case you want to check out a specific question again. So have a lovely time, don't stop singing, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye!
Bye!